So it is official. Democrats have officially lost their mind. They have introduced on the floor a resolution that would essentially rebuke, quote unquote, the comments of Ilhan Omar in another devastating blow to both free speech and the fight against the apartheid government that is Israel. Now, in an article released by, this just came down the pipeline last night, and this is an article released by Politico. It outlines exactly what this legislation does and what it was, why it was created. Now, the title of the article is House Dems Will Take Floor Action to Confront Omar's Latest Israel Comments. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and top Democrats will take floor action Wednesday in response to controversial remarks by Representative Ilhan Omar about Israel, the second such rebuke of the freshman Democrat from party leaders in recent weeks. Pelosi and other senior Democrats have drafted a resolution to address the controversy, which ballooned over the weekend following a public clash between Omar and senior Jewish lawmakers. The resolution, which began, oh, by the way, it wasn't only senior Jewish lawmakers. What Politico is refusing to divulge is the fact that this actually started because of the GOP. And then the Democrats, there were some senior Jewish lawmakers, but also Democrats that were not politicians, if you will, also jumped in on attacking her. And instead of standing up for their colleague, this is a person who's part of their party, they would rather attack, once again showing that big money interests are the only signs they care about. It isn't about a D or an R, it's about the dollar sign. So let's continue. The resolution, which began circulating to members Monday night, comes after a backlash from top Democrats who accuse Omar of anti-Semitism for referring to pro-Israel advocates as allegiance to a foreign country. The draft measure is 4 pages that largely details the history and recent rise of anti-Semitism in the United States, but does not specifically name Omar, which had been an internal dispute amongst Democrats. Basically, they wanted to finger point at her. This is, once again, in my opinion, just another attempt at bigotry. In an attempt to otherize Omar, in play on the inherent biases against Muslim people, the Islamophobia in the United States, and fearmonger. Because once again, and I explained this in my last video, they make the connection that, this is normal, right? We've been demonized. I remember in basic training, we were taught to use racial slurs against Muslim people. In school, grade school, your first 12 years of your life. Maybe a little bit different now. I imagine it's not that much different. Even at one of the best schools in the country, which I graduated from in high school, we had the option to learn Spanish, French, Latin, and there was one other language as well. I want to say it was Chinese. Don't quote me on that. But in a community, not only in Fayetteville, North Carolina, but Raleigh, Wake Forest, Chapel Hill, Cary, in a community that's dominated by Desi and Arabs, people who are Muslim, we never got the option to learn Arabic, Farsi, Desi, Urdu, things like that. We never really got, because what happens is that once you learn these languages, you actually have to become engulfed in the culture. I don't speak it as well as I used to, but I do still speak, and I can, for the most part, understand Korean. That it was easy for me to learn Korean at college, but I also started learning it when I was about 15 or 16 years old because I went to Korean church. I played soccer at the Korean church. I ate there. I went to retreats and events, and we went skiing together. And I was around the culture so much. When the achumadul and the, which like older women who don't speak English, not because they can't, but because they choose not to. It's a hierarchical thing. They would speak to me and I would understand because there's only so many. Language is very simple, believe it or not. There's only so many things you can say in a given situation. But I understood what they were saying to me because I was engulfed in the culture, so my brain would autocomplete. Now, once again, being part of the culture, I grew to love the Korean people, the people that I were hanging around, the same way that somebody who became engulfed in Latin American culture may feel the same way. But when you grow to love a culture and a people, you humanize them. Now, how do you make sure that you do not grow to love a culture and its people and understand their perspective? You dehumanize them. And that is what we've seen take place in the United States as it pertains to Arabic Desi cultures. And so I just want to be very clear about that, because I think it's something that the whole Muslim aspect of this cannot be stressed enough. In West Virginia, in the Capitol, they posted a picture trying to basically associate Ilhan Omar with 9/11. This isn't a coincidence that the Democrats are also on the whole un-American trip. It's easy to demonize in their minds, and unfortunately, this is the truth. It's easy to demonize especially a black refugee Muslim woman like Ilhan Omar, because they've spent decades conditioning us to see them as other. Just like they've spent decades conditioning, poor white people to see black people as other instead of seeing us as equal or as one of them, or as going through the same economic struggles, having these same overall enemies. That's the only reason that slavery and Jim Crow has been able to persist. So I can't stress enough the importance of understanding that this is not a coincidence that they are attacking her on this issue. Ilhan Omar is not the first one to speak out against AIPAC. She's not the first one to speak out against Israel. Keith Ellison went through the same thing. Rashida Tlaib is also dealing with this, but not to the extent that Ilhan is. Now, Rashida Tlaib, once again, makes the same comments. But Rashida is not hijab. Rashida is not black. And although Rashida is Muslim, there is something to be said for a person that, like, Ilhan Omar is basically embodiment, is representative of all the attempts that we've made to dehumanize particular demographics, whether it be hijabi women, Muslim women who wear the hijab or the scarf, not to be confused with a niqab or a burqa. Those are three different things. There's the hijabi woman, the idea of that. Black women, that's been centuries of conditioning. And Muslim women in general, and Africans as well. So and so they know that they can use her as a poster child to say, this is what we'll do to you if you disagree or question Israel or our loyalties to them. And we know that, unfortunately, most of America, or a lot of America, will buy into that fear mongering. Let's go ahead and continue with the article. This resolution condemns the myth of dual loyalty, using the same language as top Democrats like House Appropriations Chairwoman Nita Lowry, who has condemned condemned Omar in the last couple of days. Now, I don't know if you all remember, I did a video about this yesterday, specifically addressing Nita's comments. Now, the article goes on to say that if the House moves ahead with the vote on Wednesday as planned, it would be an unprecedented public rebuke of Omar, who was sworn into office just over 60 days ago. Omar's office declined to comment about the Democratic resolution on Monday. Yet these efforts by Pelosi and other Democratic leaders won't be enough for Republicans who want more serious punishment for Omar. House Leader Kevin McCarthy, isn't that ironic? The McCarthy name, I mean. And other senior Republicans are considering offering a censure motion against Omar. Censoring, a government-censored silencing of a government-sanctioned silencing of a political opponent. This is what we're coming to. This, by the way, This, once again, isn't coincidence. We've seen the censoring. We've seen the provocation of fake news. We've seen it. Like the fake news, when I'm talking about, I mean CNN, I mean MSNBC, I mean Fox News. We've seen the misdirection, censoring, and all those things are under the same umbrella of disallowing us to have legitimate conversation and engage in civil discourse about the realities of the international community, especially when it comes to places like Israel, like Saudi Arabia, etc. Republicans may also formally demand that the Democrats strip Omar of her seat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, a move that Pelosi and senior Democrats won't take at this point. So I want to talk about a couple of things before we go. Instead, back to the article, instead it condemns the myth of dual loyalty, referring to the resolution. What? The myth of dual loyalty? Because I remember the Wall Street Journal discussing hundreds of millions of dollars spent in lobbying, spent on free trips to Democrats and Republicans, of course. I even recall that there are at least a couple of dozen Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate who actually have dual citizenship to Israel. Like, to this day, they technically, some of these senators and representatives wouldn't even be able to run for president. They would have to rebuke their Israeli citizenship to do so. But they are dual citizens. They accept paychecks in one form or another, or favors in one form or another, from both countries. You were a lot of these Democrats and Republicans too voted for a bill that would essentially criminalize any critique of the Israeli government. Hell, they haven't even taken it that far with Saudi Arabia, and we know how much they love Saudi Arabian money. But there is no myth of dual loyalty. There is only the reality of dual loyalty. Now, that loyalty doesn't only refer to our relationship with Israel, but with Saudi Arabia as well and other countries, where we allow human rights atrocities to persist only to further the interests of the United States. Hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, The Intercept did a report that showed that not only do they give hundreds of millions, but Israel is actually the quote-unquote richest lobby in Washington. As in, they spend the most and they get the most to spend. There's a reason Bernie Sanders, I think the only two that have stood with Ilhan Omar, without question, without caveat, are Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. The only two presidential candidates. We're starting to see a pattern here. The people who are pro-peace, 100% of the time. Who are anti-war, 100% of the time. It would take an act of, basically Pearl Harbor type of impact. It would take that in order for Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard to want to go into a war. And it would still be half-heartedly. Those candidates, those politicians, those quote-unquote Democrats are the only presidential candidates to stand with Ilhan Omar. The anti-war candidates. One a little bit more so than the other. But nonetheless, both of them are anti-war candidates. That lets you know that Ilhan Omar is essentially finding herself on the right side of history because, let's be honest. when has being on the right side of history ever been without controversy? In fact, the fact that she is muddled with this controversy over comments that, by the way, if you notice, Politico is still an establishment media outlet, and it's clear because these comments that Ilhan Omar said, they were so disgusting. They had to have a whole resolution to rebuke them. So clearly, those comments you might want to mention in the article. No. This whole article about the open rebuke from the Democrats, about how these comments were so distasteful and so disgusting and da-da-da-da. Where are the comments at? Think about that. Yeah, it's important to read what's right in front of us, but it's also important to check what is being omitted. Because oftentimes, what is being omitted will tell us more about the real story than what's written down. And the fact that her comments are omitted is proof enough. Because the comments are being omitted because they don't want you to see that what Ilhan Omar is saying isn't complex. It isn't anti-Semitic. Doesn't take a great deal of research. It's rather rudimentary. It is a fact. AIPAC lobbyists, Israeli lobbyists, buy off politicians. The receipts are there. They aren't even shy about it. And it wouldn't take you but 5 seconds and a Google or a DuckDuckGo search engine to figure that out if you read her comments about the things that she was alleging. They don't want you to read those comments. They just want you to associate Muslim representative, Black Somali representative, refugee representative, quote unquote, attacks Israel. Attacks Jewish people. That's how they want you. And the Democrats don't like her. So therefore, you should be loyal to your party, not the person. That's what they want. That's why they portrayed the entire issue the way that they did. This is simply lying by omission. And Politico is very aware of that. Why do you think they were one of the first ones to get the article? Because they were being told to frame it in such a way that disingenuously harmed and even to a degree slandered Ilhan Omar while making it seem as if the Democrats are taking some hardline stance on anti-Semitism. Well, I'm just going to keep standing by Ilhan, and we're going to keep educating the people. And just know, Ilhan, you're not alone in this. Many of us are with you. Many of us support you. And if the Democrats are attacking you, we'll just take example from Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, even AOC. When the Democrats start attacking you, along with the Republicans, it's because you're on the right side of history. So, stand strong and know that we're with you. Thank you for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Help us reach our goal of 500 patrons. You can do so by donating as little as $1 by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below. Don't forget, join us on Roku and JustNForm. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.